Horrifying. A young mother clutches her two small children tightly in her arms, standing in the middle of a dark kitchen, hearing her own birth mother screaming outside the door. You useless piece of trash. You think you can escape me. I gave birth to you, so I have the right to kill you. The sound of a vodka bottle, shattering on the floor. The sound of children screaming in terror within trembling arms. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching closer. That was the final night Elena Harper believed she would survive her own mother's hands. But what no one could have expected was that in the moment of absolute despair, a shadowy figure stepped in from the darkness. Not the police, not a neighbor, but one of the city's most feared mafia bosses, wealthy, powerful, dangerous A, man whose name was whispered in terror across Chicago, and he didn't come to kill. He came to snatch her and the two children out of hell. Was this truly salvation, or just another far more expensive, far more dangerous golden cage? The story you're about to hear will force you to ask yourself, when love arrives straight from the deepest shadows, would you dare open the door to let it in? Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video, comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue. They say blood is thicker than water, but for 28-year-old Elena Harper, her own mother's blood seemed poisoned, with nothing but bitterness and rage. Trapped in a crumbling apartment building on Chicago's South Side, where the wind off Lake Michigan cut through cracked windows. Like knives in October 2025, Elena woke each morning, braced for pain, and fell, asleep whispering prayers for mercy she never received. She believed this was her fate, to be the endless target for a woman whose heart had hardened long ago until she faded into nothing. But fate has a way of stepping in when hope has all but vanished. Sometimes rescue doesn't arrive on a white horse. Sometimes it comes as a powerful shadowed figure from the city's hidden world, a man whispered about in fear by those who knew his name. A man who didn't ask permission. This is the story of how a wealthy, fair-skinned mafia boss pulled a broken single mother and her two tiny children out of hell and into a life she never could have imagined. The cold in the South Side didn't just linger in the air. It seeped into your bones. October 2025 had brought an early freeze, the kind that turned breath to fog and made thin walls feel like paper. The apartment Elena shared with her mother Linda was a third-floor walk-up in a building that smelled perpetually of mildew and burnt food. Paint peeled in long strips from the ceiling, and the radiator hissed uselessly most days, offering only occasional bursts of lukewarm air. Elena's hands were raw from scrubbing dishes at the diner, and from the endless cycle of trying to keep the place livable. She knelt on the cracked linoleum floor, now wiping up spilled coffee with a rag that had once been a t-shirt, her knuckles already bruised from yesterday. She didn't dare look up. She could hear the slow creak of the recliner in the corner. Creak, creak, creak. It was the sound of a storm gathering. You missed a spot, Linda rasped, her voice thick with last night's vodka. Elena flinched, a reflex carved deep after years. I'll get it, Mama. I'm sorry. Linda Harper didn't look like a mother anymore. She looked like a woman hollowed out by decades of regret and cheap liquor. Her face was gaunt, skin sallow, eyes bloodshot and narrowed with a hatred that seemed to have no single source beyond her own shattered life. She pushed herself up from the recliner with a groan, the springs protesting, and shuffled over. Without warning, she kicked the plastic bucket of soapy water Elena had been using. It tipped, soaking Elena's faded jeans and flooding the floor she'd just dried. Look at you, Linda, spat, trembling with fury. Clumsy, useless, just like your father before the factory laid him off and he drank himself into the grave. You think waiting tables pays for this roof, pays for my medicine, pays for anything? No, Mama, Elena whispered, staring at the spreading puddle. Her voice was soft, timid, polite. The tone she'd learned kept the worst at bay, at least for a little while. I'll fix it. Get up, Linda hissed. She grabbed a fistful of Elena's dark hair, yanking her to her feet. Elena bit her lip hard to stifle the cry. She'd learned long ago that crying only made it last longer. Pain bloomed across her scalp, sharp and familiar. Go down to the corner store. Old man Ramirez says he needs someone to stock shelves tonight. Don't come back without $20 or a bottle of vodka. If you do, you know what's waiting. Linda released her with a shove that sent Elena stumbling into the wall. Elena scrambled for her thin coat, a thrift store find with holes at the elbows, and slipped out the door. The hallway smelled of cigarette smoke and urine. She hurried down the stairs past neighbors who avoided her eyes, knowing better than to interfere. Outside, the wind whipped her face, stinging the fresh bruise blooming along her jaw. She pulled her coat tighter, though it did little against the cold. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's leftover fries from the diner. Sophie and Noah were with a neighbor for a few hours, paid with the last of her tips. But Elena's mind raced with worry. What if Linda decided to go looking for them? The corner store was dimly lit, fluorescent buzz overhead. Mr. Ramirez was behind the counter, counting change. He was kind in his quiet way, but kindness in this neighborhood often bowed to fear. He saw the bruise immediately, the purple shadow under her eye, but looked away, shuffling receipts. "Afternoon, Elena," he mumbled. "Your mother sent you?" "Yes, sir." Her voice was barely above a whisper, polite, guarded. "She said you might have work tonight, Mr. Ramirez sighed, rubbing his temple. "Business is slow, girl. The new chain down the block took half my customers. I ain't got much today." Elena's heart hammered. $20 was a fortune right now. If she returned empty-handed, Linda wouldn't stop at a slap or a yank. She'd use the belt, or worse, the broken lamp cord. Panic rose like bile. "Please, Mr. Ramirez. Anything. I can sweep the back, organize the cooler. Please." He looked pained. He reached under the counter and slid a crumpled $10 bill across. "It's charity, Elena. Take it and go. I can't have her storming in here again yelling like last time. It wasn't enough. A bottle of vodka cost at least $15. Elena stared at the bill, hands shaking. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. She was so tired, sleep-deprived from nights spent listening for Linda's footsteps, malnourished from giving every scrap to the kids, thin to the point her clothes hung loose. Suddenly, the light in the store dimmed. A tall figure blocked the doorway. The air shifted. The two men by the coffee machine fell silent. Even the hum of the cooler seemed quieter. Elena felt a chill unrelated to the wind. She turned slowly. He was imposing 6'3", at least broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, dressed in a tailored black overcoat that spoke of money most in this neighborhood only saw on television. Dark hair neatly combed, a face carved with sharp angles and shadowed eyes that missed nothing. Vincent Russo. They called him Vinny in hushed tones, the man who ran construction companies by day and held the city's undercurrents in his palm by night. Wealthy, powerful, dangerous, some said. He came to places like this rarely, but when he did, people moved aside. Vinny walked to the counter, boots soft on the worn tile. He placed a small stack of bills for a pack of gum, nothing extravagant. But the gesture felt deliberate. His gaze slid to Elena. It lingered on the bruise on her trembling hands, on the way she hunched as if expecting a blow. Elena tried to slip past, heart pounding. She bumped a display rack. A few candy bars tumbled. She gasped, recoiling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sir." She braced for anger. Men like him didn't tolerate clumsiness. Silence. She opened her eyes. Vinny was looking down at her, not with rage, but with something piercing, assessing. His gray-blue eyes dropped to the bruise, to her raw knuckles, to the fear etched in every line of her posture. He turned to Mr. Ramirez. His voice was low, resonant, like distant thunder. "Who is she, Mr.?" Ramirez swallowed. "That's Elena Harper, Linda's daughter, single mom, works at the diner down the block." Vinny looked back at Elena. For a long moment she thought he might strike her, or worse. Instead, he extended a hand, large, steady, scarred faintly at the knuckles, not grabbing, offering. Elena stared. Slowly trembling, she placed her small, cold hand in his. He helped her stand with effortless strength. "Go home," Mr. Ramirez whispered urgently. "Take the 10. Elena clutched the bill. Tears welled. "It's not enough," she breathed more to herself. She'll hurt me bad." Vinny froze. His head tilted like a predator catching a scent. "Who will, my mother?" Elena whispered, voice cracking. Vinny stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes, guilt old and gnawing. Remorse that had never quite healed. A violent conflict raging behind the calm exterior. He had seen broken women before. He had caused some of that brokenness in his world. But this quiet, resilient mother with 2 babies depending on her hit something deep. A surge of protectiveness, fierce and immediate, crashed through him. Love, no, not yet, but something overwhelming, possessive, tender in its intensity. He could not walk away. He turned to the counter, sliding a thick envelope toward Mr. Ramirez. "Store credit. Whatever she needs," Mr. Ramirez stammered. "Vinny, that's take it." Vinny's tone brooked no argument. Then he looked at Elena again. "Come with me." Her world tilted. Dizziness washed over her. Numbness spread through her limbs. "Where? Who are you?" Vinny leaned closer, voice soft but ironclad. "Someone who sees what I once couldn't save. Away from here. Do you want to stay? Do you want the next beating? Elena looked toward the door, toward the cold apartment waiting, toward Sophie and Noah, innocent and hungry, then back at this stranger, this powerful man whose eyes held storms of guilt and sudden fierce devotion. It was a choice between known hell and unknown salvation. She nodded, barely a whisper. I'm ready. Vinny placed a gentle hand on her back, firm, protective, and guided her out into the freezing October wind. As they walked toward his waiting black SUV, Elena felt her legs weaken, balance faltering. Shock numbed her. Confusion spun in her mind. Fear clawed at her chest. But beneath it all, a tiny, terrified spark of curiosity, and something deeper. Wondered if just maybe this was the moment everything changed. Vinny's heart thundered. Guilt tore at him, years of choices that had left blood on his hands, remorse for a wife lost to illness while he built an empire on shadows. Now this woman, this fragile, beautiful fighter, stirred something violent in its tenderness. He would protect her. He would burn worlds to keep her safe. The conflict raged inside him, power versus vulnerability, darkness versus this sudden, overwhelming light. They stepped into the vehicle. The door closed with a solid thud, and the city lights blurred as they drove away from the life that had nearly destroyed her. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fryer grease, the kind of scent that clung to Elena's hair and skin no matter how many times she washed. It was a small place on the corner of 63rd and Halsted, flickering neon sign that read, "Open 24 hours." Cracked vinyl booths patched with duct tape, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since before Sophie was born. Elena moved between tables, like a ghost refilling water glasses, clearing plates, forcing smiles that never reached her eyes. Her apron was stained, her sneakers worn through at the heels, and every step reminded her how little padding remained between her bones and the cold floor. It was late past 11 on a Thursday, in October 2025, and the dinner rush had long since died. Only a handful of regulars remained, the night shift security guard nursing black coffee, the cab driver counting singles, and now this new man who had walked in 10 minutes earlier and taken the booth farthest from the door. Elena approached with the coffee pot hands trembling just enough to make the liquid slosh. She kept her head down, hair falling forward to hide the bruise that had deepened to an ugly plum color along her jaw. "More coffee, sir." The man looked up. Vincent Russo. She hadn't recognized him at first, not in the dim light, not with the way exhaustion blurred everything, but now she did. Everyone in this part of the South Side knew the name even if they never said it aloud. Fair-skinned, dark-haired, dressed in a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than Elena made in 3 months. He carried himself like someone who owned the air around him. He studied her for a long moment. Not the leering way some men did. Something quieter, deeper. His gray-blue eyes traced the bruise, the hollows under her cheekbones, the way her thin wrists shook as she poured. "Sit down for a second," he said. His voice was low, calm, the kind of calm that made the room feel smaller. Elena froze. I can't. I'm working. 1 minute. No one's here to complain." She glanced toward the kitchen. The cook was on break, smoking out back. The other waitress had already clocked out. No one would see. She slid into the booth opposite him, perching on the very edge, hands folded tight in her lap. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Vinny pushed the sugar shaker toward her. "You haven't eaten tonight." It wasn't a question. Elena swallowed. "I'm fine, sir." "You're not fine." He said it gently, but the words landed like stones. "You're shaking. You're thin enough that I can count your ribs through your shirt. And that bruise didn't come from walking into a door." Her throat closed. She stared at the table, at the tiny cracks in the formica. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." Vinny leaned forward slightly. Inside him, something old and vicious twisted. Remorse sharp as a blade sliced through the armor he wore every day. He had built walls of money and power to keep guilt at bay, but guilt never stayed buried. It rose now hot and violent because this woman, this exhausted, bruised mother, looked at him the way his late wife once had, not with fear of him, but with fear of everything else. He hated it. Hated that he recognized the look. Hated that he felt this sudden burning need to shield her from whatever storm had already broken her. Elena lifted her eyes just for a second. "Why do you care?" "Because I know what it looks like when someone's drowning and no one throws the rope." Silence stretched between them. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Outside, a police siren wailed past, then faded. Elena's voice came out small, polite, the way she spoke to anyone older, anyone with more power. "I have 2 babies waiting for me. Sophie's 3, Noah's 1. They're with a neighbor tonight because I couldn't afford the sitter again. If I don't bring home enough tonight..." She stopped. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. Mama gets mean when she's short. Vinny's jaw tightened. Inside his chest, conflict roared. Power versus restraint. The urge to storm that apartment and drag Linda Harper into the street, versus the knowledge that violence, even righteous violence, always carried a price. He had paid prices like that before. He carried the scars. He reached into his coat and placed a crisp $100 bill on the table. This is for you. Not charity. A tip. For the coffee. Elena stared at the money like it might bite. I can't, you can. And you will. His tone left no room for argument. Take it. Buy food for the kids. Buy yourself something warm to wear. And tomorrow when your shift ends, I'll be waiting outside. Her breath caught. Why? Because I'm not leaving you in that hell another night. Elena's world tilted. Dizziness swept over her, sharp, disorienting. Her fingers went numb. She gripped the edge of the table to keep from swaying. Horror clawed at her throat. Fear. Confusion. And beneath it all, a tiny, terrified curiosity that felt like betrayal. How could she even consider trusting this man, a mafia boss? A stranger. Yet the money lay there real solid, more than she'd seen in months. She thought of Sophie's thin arms around her neck at bedtime. Noah's hungry cries when there was only watered-down formula left. The cold wind that slipped through the apartment windows every night, making her curl tighter around the children to keep them warm. The humiliation of begging Mr. Ramirez for scraps of work. The way Linda's voice turned venomous when the bottle ran dry. Tears spilled over. She wiped them quickly with her sleeve. I don't even know your name. Vincent. Vinny. He said it softly, almost like a confession. Elena, she whispered. Elena Harper. He nodded once. Elena, tomorrow night. I'll be here. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just think about it. She stared at him, really looked. Beneath the tailored coat, the expensive watch, the quiet authority, she saw something raw. Pain. Guilt. A man at war with himself. It terrified her. It also made her heart stutter in a way she hadn't felt in years. Vinny stood. He placed another 50 beside the 100. For the kids. Diapers, milk, whatever they need. Elena's hand hovered over the bills. When she finally touched them, her fingers shook so badly she almost dropped them. He walked to the door, paused, looked back. You're stronger than you know, Elena. Don't let anyone tell you different. The bell above the door jingled as he left. Elena sat frozen in the booth. The diner felt suddenly too big, too empty. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Shock numbed her limbs. Confusion spun inside her skull. She felt dizzy, off balance, like the floor might open beneath her. She looked down at the money, $250. Enough to buy formula diapers, a winter coat for Sophie, maybe even heat the apartment for a week. Enough to breathe. But it came from him. A man who could destroy lives with a phone call. A man who had looked at her not with pity, not with lust, but with something fierce and protective that made her chest ache. She folded the bills carefully, tucked them into her bra, the only place Linda wouldn't look. Then she stood on legs that felt like water. Outside, the wind howled down Halstead. Elena stepped into it, coat pulled tight, and started the long walk home. Halfway there, a black SUV idled at the curb near the alley. 2 men in dark jackets stepped out. Hard faces, colder eyes. They weren't police. They weren't locals. One of them spoke into a phone. Yeah, Russo just left the diner. She's still inside. You want us to move now? Elena ducked behind a dumpster, heart slamming against her ribs. She pressed herself flat against the brick, barely breathing. The men scanned the street, then climbed back into the SUV and drove off. She waited until the taillights vanished before she moved. When she reached the apartment building, Linda was already waiting at the top of the stairs, eyes glassy, bottle in hand. Where's my money, girl? Elena's voice came out small, trembling. I got a good tip tonight. Linda snatched the 20. Elena had set aside the only bill she dared show. That's it. You think I'm stupid. The first slap landed hard across Elena's cheek. Pain exploded white behind her eyes. She stumbled back, catching herself on the railing. Linda advanced. You're holding out on me. I can smell it. Elena pressed herself against the wall, arms wrapped around her middle. Inside her chest, torment raged, humiliation, terror, fury, despair. She thought of the hidden money, thought of Vinny's voice, thought of Sophie and Noah asleep on the mattress in the corner. She thought of tomorrow. And for the first time in years, a tiny, dangerous hope flickered in the darkness. She didn't know if Vinny Russo was salvation or damnation, but she knew she couldn't survive another night like this. Not alone. Not anymore. The next night came too fast, like a storm you see gathering but can't outrun. Elena moved through her shift at the diner in a haze, refilling coffee cups that were already half full, wiping tables that were already clean, every motion mechanical, while her mind spun in endless circles. The $250 from Vincent Russo burned against her skin, hidden in the same place she'd tucked it the night before. She hadn't spent a cent. Not yet. Fear kept her frozen, fear of Linda finding it. Fear of what it meant to accept help from a man like him. Fear that hope itself might be the cruelest trap of all. Sophie and Noah had been fed that morning, cereal thinned with water, the last of the milk, but Elena herself had eaten nothing. Her stomach clawed at itself, a dull, constant ache. She was so thin now that her ribs pressed sharply against the inside of her skin when she breathed. Sleep had been a stranger for weeks. The apartment walls were thin. Linda's drunken muttering carried through them all night, and Elena lay awake guarding the door in case her mother decided the children were to blame for whatever fresh misery had taken root. At 10 minutes to midnight, the diner door opened with a soft chime. Vincent stepped inside. He wore the same charcoal overcoat, but tonight it was unbuttoned, revealing a crisp, white shirt beneath. No tie, no pretense of casualness. His presence filled the narrow space immediately. The air seemed to shift, grow heavier, quieter. The few remaining customers glanced up, then quickly away. Elena's tray trembled in her hands. She set it down before she dropped it. Vinny walked straight to her usual booth and sat. He didn't speak. He simply waited. She approached on legs that felt like they might give out. "You came," she whispered. "I said I would." She stood there, clutching the edge of the table. Her voice came out small, timid, polite, the voice she used when she was terrified, but trying not to show it. I don't know what to do." "Then let me help you decide." He reached into his coat and placed a plain white envelope on the table. Thick. Heavy. Elena stared at it. "What is that?" Enough to change everything, he said quietly. $50,000. Cash. Untraceable. For you and the children. No strings. No debt. You walk away from that apartment tonight, and you never have to go back. Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the table, dizziness crashing over her in waves. Numbness spread from her fingertips up her arms. The room tilted. She heard her own breathing, shallow, ragged like someone else's. $50,000. It was more money than she had ever imagined holding in her hands. Enough to rent a small apartment for years. Enough to feed Sophie and Noah properly. Enough to buy coats, shoes, medicine, heat. Enough to breathe without terror. But it came from him. From Vincent Russo. The man whose name made people lower their voices. Elena's eyes filled. Why me? Vinny looked at her, really looked. Inside him, the storm raged harder than ever. Remorse clawed at his throat, violent and unrelenting. He had spent years building walls of power to keep the guilt at bay, the guilt of a wife lost to illness, while he chased shadows, the guilt of choices that had left blood on the streets he claimed to control. He told himself he was fair, that he protected the innocent, that he never harmed women or children. But looking at Elena, thin, bruised, trembling, yet still standing, he felt something break inside. This wasn't pity. This was recognition. She was what he had failed to save once. She was the mirror of every moment he had chosen empire over heart. And now, staring at her hollow cheeks and frightened eyes, a fierce, burning surge tore through him. Love sudden and overwhelming, passionate in its intensity, possessive in its tenderness. He wanted to shield her, to burn the world that had hurt her, to give her everything he had denied himself. He swallowed the conflict down. "Because I see you," he said, voice rough. "I see what they've done to you, and I can't walk away." Elena's tears spilled over. "My mother. She won't let me go. She'll come after me. After the kids. Then we end it tonight." He stood. "Get your things. We're leaving." Elena hesitated. The diner felt suddenly too bright, too loud. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. "I have to pick up Sophie and Noah first. They're with Mrs. Delgado down the block." Vinny nodded. "I'll drive you." They stepped out into the October wind. It sliced through Elena's thin coat like glass. Vinny opened the passenger door of the black SUV, sleek, silent, smelling faintly of leather and expensive cologne. She slid inside, feeling small, out of place, like a sparrow in a cathedral. The drive to Mrs. Delgado's was short. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. Every streetlight they passed felt like judgment. When they reached the row house, Mrs. Delgado answered the door in her robe, eyes widening at the sight of Vincent Russo standing behind Elena. "Elena. Everything okay?" Elena forced a small, trembling smile. I'm taking the kids for a little while. Thank you for watching them." Mrs. Delgado glanced at Vinny, then back at Elena. She didn't ask questions. She simply handed over Sophie's sleepy thumb and mouth, and then Noah bundled in a too small blanket. Elena held them close, tears streaming silently. Their small bodies were warm against her chest. Safe. For now. Vinny opened the back door. 2 car seats, brand new, were already installed. Elena stared. "I had them put in this afternoon," he said quietly. She buckled the children in with shaking fingers. Sophie stirred, murmured "Mama," and went back to sleep. Noah clutched Elena's finger. They drove away, but they didn't go far. Vinny turned toward the apartment building. Elena's stomach dropped. "What are we doing?" "Ending this," he said. He parked across the street. The building loomed, peeling paint, broken windows, the same flickering streetlight that had watched Elena's every miserable night. Linda was on the stoop, cigarette glowing in the dark bottle in her hand. She saw the SUV. Her eyes narrowed. Vinny stepped out first. Elena stayed in the car, clutching the sleeping children, heart hammering. Linda stood. "Who the hell are you, Vincent?" Walked up the cracked steps, slowly, deliberately. His voice carried across the cold night air. "Vincent Russo." The name hit Linda like a slap. She took a step back. "What do you want?" "I want Elena and the children. Permanently. No contact, no calls, no showing up. Nothing." Linda laughed, harsh, brittle. "She's my daughter. She owes me." Vinny pulled the envelope from his coat. Thick, white. He held it out. $50,000. Cash. You sign a simple paper saying you relinquish all rights. You disappear from their lives, or I make sure you disappear in other ways. Linda's eyes locked on the envelope. Greed flickered, ugly and bright. Inside the SUV, Elena watched, frozen. Horror clawed at her throat. Confusion spun in her mind. This couldn't be real. This powerful man, wealthy, dangerous, standing on her mother's stoop, buying her freedom like she was livestock. But she wasn't livestock. She was a mother. She was a woman who had endured cold nights, empty cupboards, bruises that never quite faded. And now someone was fighting for her. Linda snatched the envelope. Her fingers shook as she tore it open, counted quickly. Her face twisted, greed winning over everything else. "Fine," she spat. "Take the brat. She eats too much anyway." Vinny produced a single sheet of paper and a pen. Linda scrawled her name without reading it. He took the paper back, folded it carefully. Then, he looked at Linda one last time. "If I ever hear you've come near them again," he said, voice low and cold, "there won't be money next time." Linda backed away, clutching the cash. Vinny turned and walked back to the SUV. Elena stared at him through the window. Tears streamed down her face. Shock numbed her. Dizziness swept over her again, violent, disorienting. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold the children. Vinny slid into the driver's seat. He looked at her, not with triumph, but with something raw, exposed. "You're safe now," he whispered. Elena's voice broke. "Why?" He reached across the console slowly, carefully, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Because I couldn't save someone once," he said. "And every day since has been punishment. Until tonight." Inside him the conflict roared, love burning brighter than guilt, tenderness warring with the darkness he carried. He felt it all at once, remorse, longing, fierce protectiveness, and something deeper, more dangerous love so intense it terrified him. Elena leaned into his touch for just a second, then pulled back, confused, fearful, guarded. But the spark was there, small, fragile, alive. Vinny started the engine. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Behind them, Linda stood on the stoop, clutching her money, already counting it again. Ahead of them lay the unknown. Elena held her children tighter. And for the first time in years, the wind didn't feel quite so cold. The black SUV glided through the south side streets like a shadow slipping between lampposts. Inside, the leather seats were warm, the heater hummed softly, and the faint scent of cedar and polished wood wrapped around Elena like something foreign and expensive. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around herself, Sophie asleep against her chest, and Noah curled in the car seat behind her. Every bump in the road jolted her heart. She kept waiting for the dream to shatter, for the car to stop, for Vincent to change his mind, for Linda to appear screaming from the darkness. But the city lights blurred past without interruption. No sirens, no pursuit, only the quiet rhythm of tires on asphalt and the slow, even breathing of her children. Vincent drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. He hadn't spoken since they left the apartment building. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, with everything unsaid. Elena stole glances at him. His strong profile illuminated by passing streetlights, the faint scar along his jaw, the way his knuckles whitened when he gripped the steering wheel tighter at red lights. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Who was he really? Why her? What would happen tomorrow? But fear kept her quiet. Her voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "Where are we going?" "My place," he answered, without looking at her. "It's safe, gated, private. No one gets in unless I allow it." Elena swallowed. "Your place, a house outside the city, suburbs, big enough for all of us." The words landed like stones in still water. Big enough. She had never lived anywhere described as big enough. Their apartment could be crossed in 12 steps. The mattress she shared with the children sagged in the middle, the springs poking through threadbare sheets. She had spent so many nights pressed against the wall, arms around Sophie and Noah, trying to block the draft that seeped through the cracked window frame. The cold had become a constant companion, biting relentless, stealing sleep, and leaving her shivering even under every blanket she owned. Now the heater blew warm air across her face. She felt almost guilty for enjoying it. They crossed the bridge over the Chicago River. The skyline receded in the rearview mirror. The streets grew wider, cleaner. Streetlights stood straight and bright. Trees lined the sidewalks instead of chain-link fences. Elena's chest tightened. This was another world. One she had only seen from buses, or when delivering food orders to neighborhoods that smelled of fresh-cut grass instead of exhaust and despair. Vincent turned onto a quiet, tree-lined road. Iron gates swung open automatically as the SUV approached. A long driveway curved upward, lit by low landscape lights. At the end stood a house, a mansion, stone and brick windows glowing gold against the October night. Elena's breath caught. It looked like something from a magazine she once found discarded in the diner break room. Vincent parked in the attached garage, larger than her old apartment. The door closed behind them with a soft, final thud. He turned off the engine. Silence settled. Elena didn't move. Vincent looked at her, then really looked. "You're safe here, Elena. I swear it." Her eyes filled. "I don't know how to do this. You don't have to do anything tonight except rest." He got out first, came around to her side, opened the door. When she hesitated, he extended his hand the same way he had in the store that first night. Steady. Patient. Elena placed her trembling fingers in his. His palm was warm, calloused in places that spoke of work despite the wealth. He helped her out gently, then reached into the back for Noah's car seat. Sophie stirred but didn't wake as Elena lifted her. They entered through a side door into a mudroom lined with hooks and benches. The air smelled of clean laundry and faint vanilla. Vincent led them up a wide staircase, carpet soft under Elena's worn sneakers. He opened a door at the end of the hall. The room was enormous. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens. A crib already set up in the corner, new tags still dangling from the rail. A rocking chair by the window. Thick curtains that would block the morning light. A private bathroom with towels folded like hotel stacks. Elena stopped in the doorway. Dizziness swept over her again, sharp, numbing. She swayed. Vincent's hand steadied her elbow. "Easy," he murmured. She stared at the room. Tears slipped down her cheeks. This is for us, for you and the children. There's another room across the hall for when they're ready for their own beds. But tonight stay together." Elena set Sophie on the bed. The little girl curled immediately into the comforter, sighing in her sleep. Elena unbuckled. Noah laid him beside his sister. Both children looked impossibly small against the expanse of white sheets. She turned back to Vincent. Her voice cracked. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me." His own voice was rough. Inside him, the conflict tore wider, guilt crashing against this new fierce tenderness. He had spent years convincing himself that power was protection, that distance kept people safe from him. But standing here, watching Elena's thin shoulders shake with quiet sobs, he felt the lie crack open. Love, sudden, burning, all-consuming, surged through the fracture. He wanted to pull her close, to promise her the world. He wanted to run from the darkness he carried, terrified it would taint her. Instead, he stepped back. There are clothes in the dresser. Pajamas, robes, sizes I guessed from seeing you. If they don't fit, we'll fix it tomorrow. There's food downstairs whenever you're hungry. I'll be in the study if you need anything. He started to leave. "Wait," Elena whispered. He paused. She took one step toward him, then another. Her bare feet sank into the carpet. She looked up at him, eyes wide, guarded, curious, terrified. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, softer this time. Vincent's throat worked. "Because the first time I saw you in that diner, I saw someone who should never have had to fight alone. And I've spent too long letting people fight alone." A long silence. Then Elena did something she hadn't done in years. She reached out slowly, hesitantly, and touched his sleeve. Just the fabric. Just a brush of fingers. "Thank you," she breathed, "for seeing me." Vincent's hand covered hers for a heartbeat. Warmth spread from the contact, electric and gentle. He felt it all, the remorse that had haunted him for years, the violent need to protect her now, the overwhelming surge of love that made his chest ache. He released her hand. "Get some rest, Elena." He left quietly, closing the door behind him. Elena stood in the center of the room, listening to his footsteps fade. She looked at her sleeping children, safe, warm, fed for the first time in too long. She looked at the room, luxurious, quiet, hers for the night. Then she sank to the floor beside the bed, knees drawn up, face buried in her hands. Sobs came silent at first, then wrenching. Years of cold nights, empty plates, bruises hidden under sleeves, nights spent whispering apologies to her children for not being enough. All of it poured out in the stillness of this beautiful, impossible room. She cried until exhaustion claimed her. When she finally climbed onto the bed, still in her clothes, too afraid to change, she pulled Sophie and Noah close. Their small bodies were warm against hers. For the first time in memory, no wind howled through cracks. No threats waited in the dark. Only quiet. Only safety. Downstairs, Vincent sat in his study glass of untouched whiskey in hand. He stared at the wall at nothing. Inside him, the storm raged on remorse for the life he had led, guilt for the people he couldn't save, and now this fierce, burning love for a woman he barely knew. It terrified him. It anchored him. He set the glass down. Tomorrow he would show her more. Tomorrow he would begin to earn the trust she had just begun to give. But tonight he simply listened to the house settle around them, around her, and felt for the first time in years that something inside him might finally heal. Morning came soft and golden through heavy curtains Elena had never dared to touch. She woke slowly, disoriented, heart leaping with the old panic before memory returned. No creak of Linda's recliner. No sour smell of spilled vodka. Only the faint scent of clean cotton and the quiet breathing of Sophie and Noah beside her. The children were still asleep, cheeks flushed with warmth, limbs sprawled across pillows that had never known a sag. Elena sat up carefully. Her body ached, the deep, bone-weary ache of years spent tense waiting for the next blow. She looked down at herself, still in yesterday's clothes, thin sweater pilled and stretched, jeans stiff with old grease from the diner. The contrast to the pristine white duvet made her feel small, dirty, unworthy. She slipped from the bed on silent feet and padded to the bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger, hollow cheeks, shadowed eyes, skin pale from too many nights without sun or proper food. She turned on the faucet. Hot water came instantly steaming. She stared at it for a long moment before cupping her hands and splashing her face. The warmth felt like a betrayal. She had spent so long washing in cold tap water that ran brown before it cleared. Downstairs she found the kitchen. It was larger than her entire old apartment. Marble counters gleamed under pendant lights. A double oven, a refrigerator tall enough to hide in a coffee machine that looked like it belonged in a museum. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, hands clasped tight. Vincent was already there, sleeves rolled to his elbows, pouring orange juice into small plastic cups with cartoon characters on them. He looked up when she entered. "Good morning," he said quietly. Elena's voice came out small, hesitant. "Good morning, sir." "Vinny," he corrected gently. "Just Vinny." She nodded, eyes darting to the cups. You bought those for the kids? I had someone pick up a few things last night after you went to bed. Nothing fancy. Just enough to make them feel at home." Elena's throat closed. She looked away, blinking hard. Vincent set the cups on a tray. "They're still sleeping." "Yes. They never sleep this late. They're safe. Their bodies know it." He gestured to the island. A plate weighted scrambled eggs, toast, fresh strawberries, a small bowl of yogurt. Real food. Not scraps. Not watered-down oatmeal scraped from the bottom of a pot. Elena stared. Her stomach twisted with hunger so sharp it hurt. She hadn't eaten since the diner shift 2 days ago. "Sit," Vincent said. Not an order. An invitation. She perched on the stool, hands in her lap. "I should wait for the children. They'll eat when they wake. This is for you." She picked up the fork with trembling fingers. The first bite, warm, soft, seasoned, brought tears to her eyes. She ate slowly, trying not to devour it, trying not to cry. Vincent watched her, not staring, just present, quiet. When the plate was half empty, she set the fork down. "I don't know how to repay this." "You don't repay safety, Elena. You accept it." She looked at him, then really looked. The man who commanded fear in half the city sat across from her in a simple gray t-shirt, hair slightly mussed from sleep, eyes shadowed with something deeper than exhaustion. "I found something," she whispered. "In the hallway last night. A folder. On the table by the stairs." Vincent stilled. "It had receipts," she continued softly. "Donations. To the women's shelter on 63rd. To the children's hospital. To the food pantry where I used to stand in line at 4 a.m. Anonymous. But the dates. They go back years." Vincent looked down at his coffee. His knuckles whitened around the mug. "I didn't know," Elena said, "that you were doing that. I didn't want anyone to know." His voice was rough. "It doesn't erase anything else I've done." Inside him, the conflict roared louder than ever. Remorse, old, gnawing, vicious, clashed against this new, fierce tenderness. He had given money in secret because he could never give forgiveness to himself. But seeing Elena's eyes soften, seeing the guarded curiosity bloom into something warmer, cracked open a place in his chest he had long thought sealed shut. Love surged, passionate, burning, overwhelming. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to hide forever. The violence of the contradiction made his hands shake. Elena reached across the island, slow, tentative, and covered his hand with hers. "It matters," she whispered. "It matters to the people who didn't have to stand in those lines anymore." He turned his hand over. Their fingers laced. Neither moved. For a long moment, the kitchen held only the sound of their breathing and the distant tick of a clock. Then Sophie's voice floated down the stairs. Small, sleepy, confused. Mama Elena pulled back gently. "Coming, baby." She hurried upstairs. Vincent stayed behind, staring at his empty hand, heart pounding with something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The day unfolded in small, quiet miracles. Vincent showed Elena the playroom, soft rugs, shelves of books and toys, a window seat overlooking the backyard. Sophie and Noah explored with wide eyes, touching everything as if it might vanish. Elena watched tears slipping silently down her cheeks. He cooked lunch, grilled cheese, tomato soup, apple slices cut into stars. The children ate until their cheeks were smeared with cheese. Elena ate too slowly, savoring every bite, still half convinced it would disappear. In the afternoon, Vincent took a call in his study. Elena heard his voice, low, controlled, edged with steel. When he emerged, his jaw was tight. "Trouble?" she asked softly. "Old business," he said. "Nothing you need to worry about." But she worried. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Vincent stepped outside to meet someone at the gate. Elena watched from the window, curtain pulled aside just enough. Two men waited in a dark sedan. Words were exchanged. Postures stiffened. Vincent never raised his voice, but the air around him changed, became dangerous, coiled. The men backed down, climbed into their car, and drove away. Vincent returned inside. His face was calm, but his eyes were stormy. Elena met him in the hallway. Who were they? People who think they can take what isn't theirs. She stepped closer. "Are we safe here?" He looked down at her, small, thin, fierce in her quiet way. "As long as I'm breathing," he said, "you're safe." Something shifted inside her then. Suspicion cracked. Fear softened at the edges. Curiosity bloomed into something warmer, more dangerous. She reached up slowly and touched the scar on his jaw. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Vincent closed his eyes for a heartbeat. When he opened them, the conflict was raw, exposed. "I've carried worse." "Not anymore," she whispered. He leaned down just a fraction. Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss. Not yet. But the space between them burned. Later, after the children were bathed and tucked into clean pajamas, Elena stood in the doorway of their room, watching them sleep. Vincent came up behind her, close enough that she felt his warmth, far enough to give her space. "They look peaceful," he murmured. "They've never looked this peaceful." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. "Elena," he said quietly, "whatever happens next, you don't have to be afraid of me." She turned to face him. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "I'm afraid of how much I already trust you." Vincent's breath caught. Inside him, love and guilt collided in a violent, numbing wave. He wanted to pull her close. He wanted to run. He did neither. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Then trust this," he said. "I will protect you. All of you. With everything I have." Elena's fingers curled around his. In that quiet hallway with sleeping children behind them and the vast house around them, two broken people stood on the edge of something new. Something terrifying. Something beautiful. And neither of them pulled away. The evening shadows stretched long across the polished hardwood floors of Vincent's home, casting soft patterns that danced like forgotten dreams. Elena stood in the upstairs hallway, a small silver locket dangling from her fingers. She had found it earlier that day while folding laundry in the guest room closet, tucked into the pocket of a soft flannel shirt that smelled faintly of pine and old memories. The locket was simple, elegant, engraved with delicate initials that time had worn smooth. When she opened it, two tiny photographs stared back, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile holding a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Elena's breath caught. The woman's face held a quiet strength, a resilience that mirrored her own struggles. But it was the baby, the innocent curve of a cheek, the tiny fist that twisted something deep inside her. She snapped the locket shut, heart pounding. This wasn't hers to find. But curiosity burned, mingling with the fear that had become her constant companion. Downstairs, the children played in the living room, Sophie stacking blocks into wobbly towers while Noah clapped his hands in delight. The sound of their laughter was a balm, but Elena's mind raced. She had spent the day adjusting to this impossible new world meals that appeared without scraping the bottom of empty cupboards. Baths with endless hot water, instead of waiting for the trickle from a rusty faucet, clothes that fit without dub, holes or stains. Yet every luxury highlighted the chasm between her past and this present. She had endured winters where the wind sliced through cardboard-covered windows, nights huddled with the children under thin blankets, her body aching from hunger that never fully left. Malnutrition had carved hollows in her cheeks. Sleep deprivation painted bruises under her eyes that no amount of rest could erase overnight. Vincent found her in the hallway, pausing at the top of the stairs. He saw the locket in her hand immediately. His face changed, not anger, but something deeper, roar. Pain flickered across his features like a shadow passing over the sun. "Elena," he said quietly. She held it out, fingers trembling. "I didn't mean to pry. It was in the laundry. I'm sorry." He took it gently, thumb brushing the silver surface. "Don't be. You have a right to know who you're living with." They moved to the study, a room lined with leather-bound books and a massive oak desk that spoke of power quietly wielded. Vincent sat on the edge of the desk, locket still in hand. Elena perched on the armchair, opposite, hands folded in her lap, voice soft and timid as always when addressing him. "Who is she?" she whispered. "My wife," Vincent said. His voice cracked on the word. "Anna, and our son Daniel. He was just 6 months old in that picture." Elena's heart stuttered. Vincent looked away, jaw tight. "Cancer took her 3 years ago. Aggressive. By the time they diagnosed it, it was too late. Daniel, he was born premature because of the treatments. He fought hard, but his little body couldn't hold on." Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "Vinny, I'm so sorry." He swallowed hard. Inside him, the old wounds tore open wider than ever. Remorse crashed over him like a tidal wave, gnawing, violent, unrelenting. He had been powerful, even then wealthy enough to fly in specialists from across the country to buy every experimental treatment money could touch. But money couldn't stop cells from betraying the ones he loved. Guilt consumed him daily for the nights he spent handling business, while Anna suffered alone in hospital rooms for the empire he built on shadows that kept him away from his son's fragile first months. Now facing Elena, thin, resilient, a mother who had fought through hell with nothing but her bare hands, the conflict raged fiercer. Love burned through the guilt, passionate and intense, a flame that both warmed and scorched. He wanted to protect her as he couldn't protect Anna. He feared his darkness would destroy her, as it had tainted everything else in his life. "I was a different man back then," he continued, voice rough. "I thought power fixed things. I thought if I controlled enough streets, enough deals, I could shield my family from the world. But the world doesn't care about power when sickness comes knocking." Elena leaned forward slightly. "Is that why you do what you do?" Vincent met her eyes. "The mafia life. It started as survival. Grew up in a neighborhood like yours, cold apartments, empty fridges, fathers lost to factories or bottles. I climbed out by any means, but after Anna and Daniel, I retreated deeper. Made rules, no innocents harmed, no women or children touched. It's my code, my penance." She stood then, crossing the small space between them. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. "You fund those shelters, the hospitals. I've seen the folders. You're doing good, Vinny, even if you don't see it." He covered her hand with his. The touch sent sparks through both of them, electric, undeniable. Elena's breath hitched. She had come from nothing. Nights where she boiled water on a hot plate that flickered with faulty electricity days, begging for extra shifts at the diner, while her stomach growled loud enough to draw stares. Humiliation burned in her memory, the times Linda forced her to pawn the children's toys for booze money, the mornings she woke to find Sophie crying from hunger while she pretended to eat air. Now in this room of wealth, plush rugs underfoot, art on the walls worth more than she could fathom, protection wrapped around her like a blanket. But with it came confusion, fear, a dizzying disorientation that made her head spin. "Why me?" she whispered again, voice breaking. "I'm nobody. Thin from too many skipped meals, bruised from a life that never let up. Why pull me out?" Vincent rose slowly, towering yet gentle. He cupped her face with careful hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that fell. "Because the first time I saw you in that diner, I saw Anna's strength in your eyes. Not the face, the fight, the way you stand despite everything crushing you down. I couldn't save them. But seeing you there enduring, it woke something in me. Love, Elena. Sudden. Burning. It terrifies me, because I don't deserve it. But I can't walk away." His words struck her like lightning. Shock numbed her limbs. Dizziness made the room tilt. She swayed, and he caught her waist, pulling her close. Not forcefully. Protectively. "I don't know how to trust this," she admitted, voice muffled against his chest. "I've been powerless for so long. Powerless against the cold seeping through cracks against Linda's fists. against nights where I held the children and prayed the landlord wouldn't evict us before morning. And now, you, wealth like I've never imagined, protection I never dreamed of. It feels like a dream that'll shatter. Vincent held her tighter, his own heart tearing in violent conflict. Guilt screamed that he would taint her light with his shadows. Love roared back that she was his salvation. The push-pull left him breathless, aching. "It's real," he murmured into her hair. "As real as the way my heart stops when I look at you." They stood there in the quiet study, wrapped in each other. The world outside faded, the city conflicts waiting in the streets, the enemies circling his empire. For this moment there was only them, a broken man finding redemption, a weary woman discovering worth. But the moment couldn't last forever. Later that night, as Elena tucked the children in, kissing foreheads warmed by central heat instead of body heat alone, she heard Vincent's phone ring in the hallway. His voice, low-edged, carried through the door. "Not now," he said. "Handle it quietly. No confrontations unless necessary." Elena peeked out. Vincent paced, face thunderous. When he hung up, he met her eyes. "Old rivals," he explained, trying to push boundaries. "I took care of it earlier today, met them at the edge of town. Words only." They backed off. Fear flickered in her chest. "Because of us. Because they sense change." He stepped closer. "But I won't let them touch this." "Touch you?" She nodded, but anxiety gnawed. The disparity hit harder in the quiet hours, his world of tense meetings and power plays against her history of powerless endurance. Yet as he pulled her into another embrace, gentle lingering, the first sparks of trust ignited into something deeper. That night, Elena lay awake long after the children slept. Her mind replayed his words, his touch. Shock gave way to wonder. Confusion melted into curiosity. And beneath it all, a tiny flame of hope burned, passionate, intense, terrifying. Down the hall, Vincent stared at the ceiling locket on his nightstand. Love and remorse warred in his chest, violent and unending. But for the first time, love felt stronger. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more conflicts. But tonight they had each other, and that was enough to begin healing. The storm rolled in without warning that October night in 2025, the kind of Chicago squall that turned the sky black and hammered rain against windows like fists demanding entry. Inside Vincent's home, the world felt cocooned, thick walls muffling the thunder, soft lamps casting warm pools of light across the living room, where Elena sat on the floor with the children. Sophie and Noah built a fortress from cushions and blankets, giggling as they crawled through tunnels of fabric. Elena watched them with a tenderness that still felt fragile, as though joy itself might shatter if she held it too tightly. She had spent the day in quiet wonder, folding tiny clothes that smelled of fresh laundry instead of mildew, preparing snacks from a pantry that never emptied, listening to the furnace hum steadily against the cold outside. Her body still remembered the old hunger, the sharp, twisting pain of days when the last slice of bread went to the children the nights she lay awake counting breaths to keep warm. Malnutrition had left her thin to the point of fragility. Her wrists looked like they might snap under the weight of a full plate. Yet here, strength returned in small measures, color in her cheeks, steadier hands, sleep that came without terror. Vincent entered the room, quietly, coat still damp from an earlier errand. He paused in the doorway, watching the scene. Elena on the floor in soft leggings and an oversized sweater he had given her hair loose for once, laughing softly as Noah placed a stuffed bear on her head like a crown. The sight struck Vincent like a physical blow. Inside him, the familiar storm intensified, remorse crashing against love in violent waves. He had failed Anna and Daniel. He had built walls of power to keep the guilt contained. Now, seeing Elena bloom in safety, that guilt tore wider. How could he deserve this? How could his shadowed hands hold something so pure? Yet, the love burned hotter than ever, passionate, possessive. A fire that both warmed and consumed. He wanted to gather them all close and never let the world touch them again. Elena looked up, smile fading at the tension in his posture. "You're soaked," she said softly. "Let me get you a towel." He shook his head. "I'm fine. Just stay with them." Thunder cracked overhead. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Minutes later, the first alert came, a low chime from Vincent's phone. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. Another chime, then another. Elena rose slowly. "Vinny." He met her eyes. "Stay inside. Lock the doors. Keep the kids upstairs." Her stomach dropped. "What's happening?" "People who don't like change," he said quietly. "They think they can test me now." Before she could respond, the power cut completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Sophie whimpered. Noah began to cry. Elena scooped them both up, heart slamming against her ribs. "It's okay, babies. Mama's here." Vincent moved with calm precision, drawing a small flashlight from his pocket, checking windows, securing the alarm panel that still glowed on battery backup. Outside rain lashed the glass in sheets. Headlights swept across the driveway, 2 vehicles, dark SUVs identical to his own. Elena carried the children to the upstairs hallway, pressing them against her chest. Fear clawed at her throat. Old familiar fear, but sharper now, laced with something new terror. For this fragile safety she had only just begun to believe in. Downstairs, the front door rattled. Not a knock, a demand. Vincent's voice carried up the stairs, low, controlled, lethal in its calm. "You have 30 seconds to leave my property before this becomes something none of us want." A muffled voice answered through the rain. "Russo, open up. We just want to talk. You don't come to my home uninvited to talk." Elena crept to the top of the stairs, peering down. Vincent stood in the foyer, back straight, a handgun held low at his side, not raised but ready. The children clung to her. She shushed them gently, voice trembling. The door rattled harder. Then a sharp crack, not gunfire. A shoulder against reinforced steel. Vincent didn't flinch. Last warning, silence. Then footsteps retreating on wet stone. Elena exhaled shakily, but the relief lasted only seconds. Glass shattered in the kitchen, sharp, violent. Footsteps inside now. Multiple. Vincent moved like shadow, fast, silent, toward the sound. Elena backed away from the railing heart in her throat. She carried the children to the master bedroom, locked the door, pushed a heavy dresser in front of it with shaking arms. Sophie cried softly. Noah buried his face in her neck. Downstairs, voices rose, tense, edged. "You think you can walk away from the life, Russo? Take a woman and kids and pretend you're clean." Vincent's reply was ice. "I never pretended anything. But this house, those people upstairs are off limits. You cross that line, you don't walk out." A laugh, harsh, mocking. "Big man. Always the protector. Where was that when your wife needed you?" The words landed like a blade. Elena heard Vincent's sharp intake of breath through the floorboards. She pressed her back to the wall, tears streaming. How dare they use his pain as a weapon? How dare they invade this sanctuary? A scuffle, furniture scraping, grunts of effort. No shots fired. Vincent had promised no excessive violence, and he kept his word. But the fight was brutal in its restraint, bodies slamming into walls, fists connecting, furniture toppling. Elena rocked the children, whispering nonsense to keep them calm. Her own body shook, numbness creeping into her fingers, dizziness making the room spin. She had known fear before Linda's drunken rages, eviction notices taped to the door nights when the heat shut off, and she held the babies skin to skin to share what warmth remained. But this was different. This was fear for something newly precious. For Vincent. For the life he had given them. A crash downstairs, glass breaking again. Then silence. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate. Elena's pulse thundered. She grabbed a heavy lamp from the nightstand, cord yanked free, holding it like a club. The children hid behind her legs. The doorknob turned, rattled, pushed. Then Vincent's voice, rough, breathless. "Elena, it's me." She dropped the lamp, sprinted to the dresser, shoved it aside with desperate strength. The door flew open. Vincent stood there, shirt torn, lip bleeding, knuckles raw. But alive, unbroken. He stepped inside, closed the door, locked it. His eyes found hers, wild with relief, fierce with something deeper. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice cracking. She shook her head, tears falling freely. "No, the children are okay." He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled her into his arms, careful of the children between them. Elena clung to him, face buried in his chest, inhaling the scent of rain and sweat and blood. His heartbeat thundered against her ear, fast, alive. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought they were bluffing. They never should have gotten this close." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "They mentioned your wife. To hurt you." Vincent's face darkened. Inside him, the conflict exploded, guilt roaring back with fresh violence, love surging to shield her from his past. "They know my weaknesses. Always have." Elena cupped his face gently, thumb brushing the cut on his lip. "You're not weak. You're the strongest man I've ever known." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I don't deserve you saying that." "You do," she whispered fiercely. "Because you fought for us tonight. Not with rage, with control. For us." Thunder rolled again, distant now, the storm moving on. Vincent opened his eyes. The love in them was raw, unguarded, passionate, intense, burning through every layer of remorse and fear. He kissed her forehead, soft, reverent, then her temple, then lingered at the corner of her mouth. "I will end this," he vowed quietly. "No more intrusions, no more threats. I'll make sure they never come near you again." Elena nodded, but anxiety lingered. She had known powerless nights, cold wind through broken panes, hunger that made her vision blur, humiliation that stripped her dignity bare. Now power protected her, but it came wrapped in danger. Still in his arms, with the children safe between them. She felt the first true shift. Suspicion, dissolving. Fear, softening into trust. Trust igniting into something deeper. Love, quiet, fierce, growing. They stood there in the dim room as rain tapped the windows, a family forged not by blood but by choice. And for the first time, Elena believed it might last. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving only a steady drip from the eaves and the faint metallic scent of wet pavement drifting through cracked windows. Inside the house, the air still carried echoes of the night. Shattered glass swept into neat piles in the kitchen, overturned chairs righted, but bearing fresh scars. A faint smear of blood on the foyer tile that Vincent had already scrubbed, away before Elena could see it. The children slept on, exhausted from fear and tears, curled together in the big bed upstairs like small animals seeking warmth. Elena had not slept. She sat at the kitchen island, now wrapped in one of Vincent's thick robes, soft cashmere that swallowed her thin frame, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. Vincent stood across from her sleeves, rolled up a fresh bandage wrapped around his left forearm where a broken bottle had sliced during the struggle. The cut was shallow, but it bled enough to stain the white gauze pink. He hadn't complained. He never did. Elena stared at the bandage. Her voice came out soft, almost polite the way she still spoke to him when uncertainty clawed at her throat. "You could have been killed last night." Vincent met her eyes. "I wasn't, but you could have been." The words cracked. "For us, for people you barely know." He leaned forward, palms flat on the marble. "I know you, Elena. I know Sophie and Noah." That's enough. Silence settled between them, heavy, condensed, filled with everything they hadn't yet said. Elena set the mug down. Her hands shook. "They came here because of you, because of who you are." "Yes, and they'll come again." Vincent didn't lie. "Possibly." She stood then, slowly, legs unsteady from exhaustion and the lingering shock that still made her head spin. She walked around the island until she stood directly in front of him, close enough to see the faint tremor in his jaw, the way his eyes darkened with guilt. "I found something," she whispered. "In your study, while you were cleaning up downstairs." Vincent stilled. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from the robe pocket, a printed email edges curled from being handled too many times. Official letterhead, Department of Justice seal. She had read it twice already, each word carving deeper into her chest. "They want you gone," she said quietly. Quietly. "No trial. No witnesses. Because you have records. Old files. Recordings of things they did. Things high up. They call it national security. They mean erasure." Vincent exhaled slowly. "I knew they might come eventually. You were going to turn yourself in. It wasn't a question." His silence answered. Elena's breath hitched. Dizziness washed over her again, sharp numbing. She gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. "You were going to leave us. Leave me. To protect us." "I was going to draw them away," he said roughly. "Give you the house, the accounts, new names. You'd be safe. Free. Free." The word came out broken. Tears spilled over. "You think I'd be free, knowing you walked into that? Knowing you sacrificed yourself because you still believe you're not worth saving?" Vincent looked away. Inside him, the conflict exploded, remorse roaring like fire through dry grass, guilt for every choice that had led here, love surging against it all in violent, desperate waves. He had spent years convinced his darkness disqualified him from happiness. Anna's death had sealed it. Daniel's had buried it. Now Elena, fragile yet unbreakable, stood before him, offering something he never thought he'd touch again. Redemption. Love so intense it hurt to breathe around it. He wanted to fall at her feet and beg forgiveness. He wanted to run before he poisoned her light. Elena stepped closer. Her voice trembled but held steady. "No." Vincent looked back at her. "Elena, no," she repeated, softer but fiercer. "You don't get to decide I'm better off without you. You don't get to decide I'm safer as a widow before I've even had the chance to love you properly." The word hung between them, love like a spark in dry tinder. Vincent's breath caught. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Tears streamed down her face, now unchecked. "I came from nothing, Vinny. Nothing. Nights so cold my fingers turned blue holding the babies. Days so hungry I counted crumbs to make sure Sophie ate first. I begged for shifts at the diner while Linda laughed and took every dollar for her bottle. I was powerless. Invisible. Broken." She reached up, cupped his face with both hands. "And then you saw me. Not the bruises. Not the hunger. You saw me. You gave me warmth. Food. Safety. You gave my children toys and full bellies and nights without fear. You gave me back my dignity. And now you think you can take yourself away because some corrupt men want to silence you." Vincent's eyes shimmered. "I can't let them hurt you." "Then don't leave." Her thumbs brushed his cheekbones. Stay. Fight with me. For us. The kitchen held its breath. Vincent closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the storm inside had shifted, not gone, but redirected. Love burned brighter than guilt for the first time in years. Fierce, protective, consuming. He covered her hands with his. If I stay, they won't stop. Then we don't stay here. Elena's voice steadied. We disappear. Together. You have the means. I have the will. We'll take the children and go where no one can find us. Start over. Clean. Real. Vincent searched her face. You'd leave all this. The safety, the security. I'd leave anything, she whispered, except you. He pulled her close, then arms wrapping around her with a tenderness that belied the strength in them. Elena melted against him, face buried in his chest, inhaling the scent of rain-soaked fabric and faint copper from his cut. His heartbeat thundered beneath her ear, fast alive hers. In that quiet kitchen with dawn light creeping across the marble, and children sleeping peacefully upstairs, something unbreakable formed between them. Vincent pressed his lips to her hair. I love you, he said, simple, raw, inevitable. I've loved you since the first night in the diner. It scared the hell out of me then. It still does now. Elena tilted her head back. Tears shimmered on her lashes. I love you too, she breathed. I didn't know it could happen this fast, but it did. And I'm not letting you throw it away. Their first real kiss happened there, slow, reverent tasting, of salt and promise. Not desperate, not frantic, just right. A seal on everything they had survived to reach this moment. When they parted foreheads, resting together, Vincent whispered, We'll go. Soon. I'll make the arrangements. New identities. A place far from here. Somewhere quiet. Safe. Elena nodded. Together. He kissed her again deeper, this time a vow. Upstairs, Sophie stirred and called softly for Mama. Elena smiled through tears. Go, Vincent murmured. I'll clean up down here. She paused at the doorway, looked back at him, tall, powerful, wounded hers. I meant what I said, she told him quietly. No more leaving. No more sacrificing yourself. We're a family now. We fight together. Vincent's throat worked. Together. Elena climbed the stairs on legs that still trembled but stronger now. In the kitchen, Vincent stood alone for a long moment, staring at the place where she had been. Love and guilt still warred inside him, but love was winning. For the first time in years, he believed he might deserve to win too. Outside the city woke sirens, distant traffic, humming threats still circling. But inside these walls, a new beginning had already taken root. And nothing, not power, not enemies, not the past, would uproot it. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of Vincent's study, painting long golden bars across the oak desk, and the scattered papers that still bore faint traces of last night's chaos. Elena sat in the leather armchair she had claimed as her own over the past few days. Knees drawn up, one of Vincent's old flannel shirts draped over her like a blanket. Sophie and Noah napped upstairs, their soft breathing carried faintly down the hallway monitor. The house felt almost peaceful, almost. Vincent stood at the window, arms crossed, staring out at the manicured lawn that stretched toward the iron gates. His posture was rigid, the bandage on his forearm a stark white against the rolled sleeve of his dark shirt. He had been quiet since their kiss in the kitchen, quiet in a way that made Elena's stomach twist with fresh anxiety. She spoke, first voice soft and careful. You've been on the phone all morning. He nodded without turning. Arranging things. Passports. Accounts. A property up north, remote, off-grid. We can leave in 3 days if we need to. Elena unfolded her legs slowly. You sound like you're still planning to do this alone. Vincent finally faced her. His eyes were shadowed the gray-blue, darkened by something heavier than fatigue. I told you we go together, but you're holding something back. She stood, robe slipping from her shoulders. I can feel it. He exhaled through his nose, a sound that carried years of guarded secrets. Marco called earlier. Marco, Vincent's second in command, the man he called brother, the one who had stood beside him through every deal, every threat, every loss. Elena had met him once briefly, tall, quiet, always watching with careful eyes. He wants to meet, Vincent continued. Says it's urgent. Something about the men from last night. He thinks he knows who sent them. Elena's heart stuttered. And you trust him? Vincent's jaw tightened. I've trusted him with my life for 15 years. The words hung between them, trust fragile as glass after the intrusion. Elena stepped closer. Then go. But not alone. I'll come with you. No. The refusal came sharp, instinctive. You stay here with the children. The gates are locked. The alarms are reset. No one gets in. She searched his face. You don't trust me to handle this. I don't trust them near you. His voice dropped rough with the violence of his emotions. Inside him, love and fear collided in brutal waves, love that wanted to shield her from every shadow he had ever cast, fear that his world would swallow her whole. Remorse gnawed deeper for Anna, for Daniel, for every choice that had painted targets on the people he loved. Now Elena, thin, resilient, finally beginning to believe she deserved safety, stood before him, offering to walk into danger beside him. The conflict tore him open. He wanted to pull her close and never let go. He wanted to push her away before his darkness stained her light forever. Elena reached for his hand. "We're in this together. You said it yourself." Vincent looked down at their joined fingers, her small, scarred hand against his larger, calloused one. The contrast still struck him. Her history of empty cupboards and cold nights versus the wealth that surrounded them now. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, security systems that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. He had given her this safety, yet he feared it was temporary. Fragile. "Stay here," he repeated, softer. "Please." She nodded once, reluctant but trusting for now. Vincent left 30 minutes later, black SUV disappearing down the long drive. Elena watched from the window until the gates closed behind him, then turned back to the quiet house. The children still slept. She busied herself folding laundry, trying to outrun the gnawing worry that coiled tighter with every passing minute. An hour later, the house phone rang, internal line from the gate guard. "Mom, Mr. Russo asked me to let someone through." "Marco." "Says it's urgent." Elena's pulse spiked. "Did he say anything else?" "Just that it's about last night." "And that Mr. Russo sent him." She hesitated. Something felt wrong, too sudden, too convenient. But Marco was Vincent's brother in all but blood. If Vincent trusted him... "Let him in," she said quietly, "but only to the foyer. I'll meet him there." She hung up, heart hammering. She checked the children still asleep, then slipped downstairs. The foyer felt cavernous now, too big, too exposed. She stood near the staircase, arms wrapped around herself. The front door opened. Marco stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the same dark coat he always did. But something was different. His eyes, usually calm, watchful, were hard, flickering. "Elena," he said. His voice carried no warmth. She nodded politely, timid out of long habit. "Marco, Vincent isn't here." "I know." He closed the door behind him. The lock clicked, soft, final. Her stomach dropped. "He sent you." Marco's lips curved, not a smile. "He thinks he did." Dizziness hit her hard, sudden, violent. She gripped the banister to keep from swaying. Numbness crept up her arms. Horror bloomed in her chest, cold and sharp. "You're the one," she whispered. "You told them where we were. Last night." Marco stepped closer. "Smart girl." "Why?" "Because he's gone soft." Marco's voice was low, bitter. "Because he thinks he can walk away, take a woman and 2 kids and pretend the life doesn't exist. Because someone offered me a better seat at the table if I clear the path." Elena backed up 1 step. Her voice shook but held. "He trusted you. Trust is expensive." Marco pulled a small pistol from his coat, not pointing it yet, just holding it low. "And I'm cashing out." Upstairs, Sophie stirred small whimper through the monitor. Elena's heart shattered. She thought of the nights she had gone hungry so the children could eat the bruises she hid under long sleeves, the cold wind that had seeped through every crack in their old apartment. She had survived all of it. She would survive this. "You won't touch them," she said, soft but steel beneath. Marco laughed, once short, ugly. "You think you can stop me?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she moved fast, desperate, grabbing the heavy brass vase from the side table. She swung it with every ounce of strength her thin frame could muster. The vase connected with Marco's wrist. The pistol clattered to the marble. He cursed, lunging for it. Elena kicked it away hard, sending it skittering under the staircase. Marco backhanded her, sharp, stinging. Pain exploded across her cheek. She stumbled, vision blurring, but she didn't fall. She screamed, raw, piercing. Vincent Marco grabbed her arm, twisting. "Shut up." But the front door burst open. Vincent stood there, coat-torn, eyes wild. He had turned back. Something in Marco's voice on the phone had felt wrong. He had doubled back, heart pounding with a premonition he couldn't shake. He saw Elena, cheek red, arm, wrenched eyes blazing with fear and fury, and something inside him snapped. Not rage. Control. He crossed the foyer in 3 strides, grabbed Marco by the collar, slammed him against the wall, not to kill but to pin. "You son of a..." Vincent's voice was low thunder. Marco struggled. "You were going to throw it all away for her." Vincent's fist connected once clean, controlled, snapping Marco's head back. Blood bloomed on his lip. "I was going to build something real," Vincent said, voice shaking with the violence of his emotions. "You sold it." Elena rushed forward, pulling at Vincent's arm. "Don't. Not like this. Vincent looked at her, really looked. The love in his eyes nearly undid him. He released Marco, who slumped to the floor. Call the guard, Vincent told her quietly. Have him restrained. Police will handle the rest. Elena nodded, legs trembling. She made the call, voice steady despite the shaking. When she hung up, she turned back to Vincent. He pulled her close, gentle, now reverent. I'm sorry. I should never have left. She clung to him. You came back. Always. His voice broke. I love you too much to lose you. Marco groaned on the floor. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, 15 years of brotherhood reduced to greed. Elena looked down at the man who had almost taken everything. Then up at Vincent, the man who had given her everything. Shock still numbed her limbs. Confusion spun in her mind. But beneath it, stronger than ever, love burned. Passionate, intense, unbreakable. She cupped Vincent's face. No more alone, she whispered. No more leaving. He nodded, tears in his eyes for the first time she had ever seen. Together, he vowed. The guards arrived moments later, swift, silent. Marco was cuffed, led away without a word. In the quiet aftermath, with the children still sleeping upstairs, Vincent and Elena stood in the foyer holding each other as though the world might still try to tear them apart. But it wouldn't. Not anymore. Because they had chosen each other. And that choice was stronger than any betrayal, any empire, any past. Love had won. The house felt different after Marco's betrayal, quieter, heavier, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the shock and now held it close. The foyer still carried the faint metallic scent of blood long cleaned away, and the children, blessedly unaware, played in the sunlit playroom upstairs, their laughter drifting down like fragile music. Elena stood in the master bedroom doorway watching Sophie arrange dolls in careful rows, while Noah pushed a wooden train along the carpet. She had bathed them twice that day, as though hot water and clean towels could wash away the memory of Marco's hand on her arm, the pistol on the marble floor, the moment she thought everything might end. She had not cried since the guards took Marco away. She had not slept either. Vincent found her there, leaning against the doorframe, arms wrapped tight around herself. He approached slowly, always slowly with her, until he stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He did not touch her yet. He waited. Elena, he said quietly. She turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. They're asleep now. He nodded. Come with me. He led her down the hallway to the master suite, the one room she had avoided since the first night. The door stood open. Inside, the space was vast, and softly lit heavy drapes drawn against the late October dusk. A fire crackling low in the stone fireplace. The enormous bed turned down with fresh linens that smelled of lavender. Elena hesitated on the threshold. Vincent stopped too. We don't have to do anything, he said. We can just sit, talk, or not talk. She looked at him, really looked. The cut on his lip had scabbed over. Faint bruises shadowed his cheekbone. Yet beneath the marks his eyes held only gentleness, and something deeper, a hunger so restrained it trembled. I'm afraid, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Of me, no. She stepped inside, closing the distance between them. Of how much I want this. Of how much I want you. I've never... not like this. Not when I felt safe. Vincent's breath caught. Inside him the storm reached its peak, remorse, and love colliding in violent, numbing waves. He had spent years believing desire was a luxury he no longer deserved. Anna's illness had stripped him of softness. Daniel's death had buried it. Power had become his armor distance, his only mercy. Yet here stood Elena, thin from years of hunger, scarred from nights too cold to sleep, yet burning with a courage that humbled him. The love he felt for her was no longer a spark. It was a wildfire, passionate, consuming, terrifying in its intensity. He wanted to worship her. He feared he would ruin her. He lifted a hand, slowly brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Then let me show you safe, he murmured. Elena leaned into the touch. Her eyes fluttered closed. I trust you. Those 3 words undid him. He kissed her, then slowly at first, reverent tasting of salt and promise. She rose on her toes, hands sliding up his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. The kiss deepened, gradual, inevitable, like a tide coming in after years of drought. Vincent's arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her gently until her feet left the floor. She wrapped her legs around him instinctively, a soft gasp escaping against his mouth. He carried her to the bed, laid her down as though she were made of glass. The cashmere robe slipped from her shoulders. He followed its path with his lips, collarbone, throat, the hollow where her pulse raced. Elena's fingers trembled as she unbuttoned his shirt, revealing the hard planes of muscle scarred from years of living dangerously. She traced one old mark with her fingertip light, wondering. Does it hurt? She whispered. Not anymore, he answered hoarsely. She kissed the scar, then another, then another. Each press of her lips felt like absolution. Vincent groaned low in his throat, a sound of surrender. He peeled away the last of her clothes with careful hands, reverent hands, as though unveiling something sacred. When she lay bare beneath him, thin, vulnerable, yet radiant in the firelight, he paused, eyes drinking her in. You're beautiful, he breathed. Tears slipped from the corners of Elena's eyes. I've never felt beautiful. You are. He lowered himself beside her, pulling her close skin to skin. You always were. Their lovemaking was slow, achingly slow, every touch a conversation, every sigh a confession. Vincent moved with deliberate tenderness, learning her body the way he had once learned to survive carefully, completely. Elena arched beneath him, fingers digging into his shoulders, whispering his name like a prayer. When release came, it was shattering, mutual, overwhelming, a wave that left them both trembling and clinging. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her back. The fire had burned low. Shadows danced across the ceiling. Elena spoke first, voice soft, still trembling. I didn't know it could feel like that. Vincent pressed a kiss to her hair. Neither did I. Silence wrapped around them, warm healing. Then Elena lifted her head. We can't stay here. Vincent's hand stilled on her spine. I know. They'll keep coming. Marco wasn't the last. There will be others, men who think you're weak now, men who want what you built. He nodded slowly. I've already started the arrangements. Offshore accounts moved. False identities prepared. A ranch in Montana, remote, self-sustaining. No ties, no trails. Elena searched his face. You're really walking away. For you, for them, for us. His voice cracked. I've spent my life running toward power. Now I want to run toward something real. Tears shimmered in her eyes again. I was so afraid you'd choose the life over us. Vincent cupped her face. Never again. She kissed him fierce this time, tasting of salt and certainty. When she pulled back, her voice was steady. Then we go tonight. Before anyone else gets ideas. Vincent's heart lurched, love and fear colliding one final time. But love won. Tonight, he agreed. They moved quickly after that, quietly, efficiently. Vincent woke the children, gently wrapped them in blankets, carried them to the garage where 2 SUVs waited, one loaded with essentials, the other rigged with a remote detonator. Elena buckled Sophie and Noah into car seats, kissed their foreheads, whispered promises they were too sleepy to understand. Vincent stood at the open garage door, looking back at the house that had once been his fortress. Inside him, the final conflict raged: remorse for the empire he was abandoning, guilt for the blood on his hands, love so fierce it drowned everything else. Elena stepped beside him, slipped her hand into his. He looked down at her, small, scarred, unbreakable. I love you, he said simply. I love you too, she answered. He pressed the remote. The house erupted behind them, controlled, contained flames licking upward in a pillar that would be seen for miles. No one would find bodies. No one would find proof. Only ash and rumor. They climbed into the lead SUV. Vincent drove steady shore, while Elena held the sleeping children close. As Chicago faded in the rearview mirror, Elena rested her head on Vincent's shoulder. Where to now, she whispered. He kissed her temple. Home. The word settled between them, simple, profound. Home. Not a building. Not money. Not power. Each other. And as the highway stretched, dark and endless ahead, carrying them toward Montana, and a life rebuilt from the ground up, Vincent felt the last chains of his past fall away. Love had not just saved Elena. It had saved him too. And that was enough. The highway north out of Chicago stretched dark and endless under a moon that seemed too pale for October 2025. Vincent drove with both hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the ribbon of asphalt ahead, while Elena sat beside him, cradling Sophie and Noah in the back seat. The children slept deeply now, cheeks flushed from the warmth of new blankets, small hands curled around stuffed animals. Vincent had bought only hours earlier. The second SUV had been left behind in a quiet rest area, rigged and detonated in a controlled blaze that would leave investigators chasing ghosts for weeks. No bodies, no evidence, only rumors that would grow in the telling. Elena watched the city lights fade in the side mirror until they disappeared entirely. Her chest ached not from fear anymore, but from something larger, the sudden overwhelming weight of possibility. She had spent so many years measuring survival in teaspoons of watered-down formula, in nights when the wind sliced through cardboard taped over broken panes, in mornings when she woke dizzy and weak because every calorie had gone to Proferen's Fide. The children first. Malnutrition had carved her down to bone and will. Sleep deprivation had painted permanent shadows beneath her eyes. Humiliation had been her constant companion, the way Linda's voice turned venomous, when the bottle ran dry, the way neighbors looked through her in the hallway, the way she once stood in line at the food pantry, praying no one recognized her. From the diner, poverty had stripped her bare in ways no one should ever be stripped. And now here she sat in heated leather seats, wrapped in a coat that cost more than she once earned in 6 months, heading toward a life she could scarcely imagine. The disparity still made her dizzy. Sometimes the gleam of the dashboard lights against the memory of flickering bulbs that died every few weeks, the quiet hum of the engine against the rattle of pipes in their old apartment. Yet none of it mattered next to the man beside her. Vincent glanced over. "You're quiet." Elena reached across the console and laced her fingers with his. "I'm thinking about how far we've come. How far you brought us." He squeezed her hand. "We brought each other." They drove through the night and into the next day, stopping only for gas, diapers, and brief stretches of fresh air. By late afternoon, they crossed into Wisconsin, then Minnesota, the landscape slowly opening into rolling fields and stands of pine. Montana waited still farther west, but Vincent had chosen a different destination first. A small cabin on the edge of a national forest, one he had purchased years earlier under a false name and never told anyone about, not even Marco. They arrived just as the sun dipped behind the mountains. The cabin was modest, by Vincent's former standards. Log walls, stone fireplace, wide windows, overlooking a meadow, but luxurious by any measure Elena had ever known. Solar panels on the roof, a deep well, a generator humming quietly in a shed. Inside, a kitchen stocked with canned goods and fresh supplies delivered ahead of time. 2 bedrooms with thick quilts, a bathroom with hot running water that never seemed to run out. Elena stepped across the threshold carrying Noah, while Vincent carried Sophie. The children woke slowly, blinking at the golden light pouring through the windows. "Home?" Sophie asked, rubbing her eyes. Vincent knelt in front of her. "Yes, sweet girl. Home." Elena set Noah down and watched as he toddled toward a basket of wooden blocks already waiting on the rug. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet cleansing tears. She turned to Vincent. "This is real," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms. "It's real." That first night, they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets while the children slept inside. The sky above was vast stars, sharp and countless in a way Elena had never seen in the city. Vincent held her close chin resting on her hair. "I still wake up sometimes thinking I don't deserve this," he admitted, voice low. "That I'll ruin it somehow. That my past will follow us." Elena lifted her head. "Your past made you the man who stopped for coffee in a rundown diner at midnight. The man who saw bruises and hunger and chose kindness instead of looking away. That past doesn't ruin us. It brought us here." Vincent's throat worked. Inside him, the final remnants of guilt and remorse flared. One last time, violent, searing, then slowly, painfully began to dissolve in the warmth of her gaze. Love had not erased his history. It had reframed it. "I love you," he said, simple, profound. "Regardless of anything. Skin color, money, past mistakes. None of it matters. Only this. Only us." Elena smiled through tears. "I love you too. And I'm not afraid anymore." They kissed, then slow, deep, unhurried beneath a sky that held no judgment. Weeks turned to months. The ranch in Montana became their true home, modest yet sufficient, far from cities and headlines. Vincent learned to chop wood, mend fences, plant a garden. Elena taught the children their letters at the kitchen table, her voice steady and patient. Sophie and Noah grew strong and brown from sun and play. Laughter became the constant soundtrack of their days. There were still shadows. Vincent sometimes woke in the night, heart racing, certain he heard footsteps on the gravel drive. Elena still flinched at sudden loud noises, still measured portions instinctively, as though scarcity might return. But they faced those moments together, hands clasped, quiet words exchanged in the dark. One evening, as autumn painted the aspens gold, they sat on the porch again. The children chased fireflies in the meadow below. Vincent took Elena's hand. "I used to think power was the only thing that could protect anyone. I was wrong. Knowledge is what protects us now. Knowledge of each other, of what we're capable of surviving, of what love can build when everything else falls away." Elena leaned against him. "Lesson after lesson brought us here. Education in compassion, in forgiveness, in choosing humanity over everything else. Knowledge of the heart matters more than knowledge of empires." Vincent smiled softly. "More knowledge, more lesson, more education, each one teaching us that love sees no color, no wallet, no past. Only the person standing in front of you." They watched the children run free, joyful, safe. Elena whispered, "We made it. We did." To everyone watching this video, may you carry away the same quiet truth: love transcends every barrier, every wound, every difference. May you find knowledge in compassion, lesson in forgiveness, education in kindness, more knowledge in patience, another lesson in resilience, further education in hope, and yet more knowledge that true wealth is measured in hearts that choose each other. We wish every single one of you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the Alex Truths channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We post engaging stories every day, stories of hope, redemption, and unbreakable love. Tell us in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything in your own life? Share your emotions, your thoughts, your own moments of choosing love over everything else. We read every comment, and it means the world to hear what moves you deepest. Thank you for being here. We'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.